Alright, now that you've done all of that, your controller should be looking pretty much exactly like mine is right now. The only difference will be if you've got it set up to fly left-handed, in which case your stick will be on this side. And this stick should be the one that is spring-loaded in all four directions. You've got your other stick over here, ready to go. And your cables hanging out the hole here, labelled, easily to see. Now the first thing I want you to do, we're going to be unscrewing these arms here. These are designed on almost all controllers to be adjustable for height, and there is usually a little grub screw inside here. So you want to take a little Allen key and remove that grub screw first, just like so. Oops, dropped it. And put that aside somewhere safe in case you want to use it again in the future. And we can go ahead and remove that, so you're left with just a threaded shaft. Okay, put that here for a second, and do the same thing to this stick here. That's our old one. You don't have to take the grub screw out of this one, just unscrew it and remove it, the whole thing. Now, if you're using an older controller that doesn't have the hole right through the center like this one does, you could just grab a drill and drill out the very end of this so that then these two shafts can screw through from both sides, because that's effectively what we're about to do. So what I want you to do is grab some Loctite like this and place it on the thread like that. Now grab your extender arm and screw that back on about halfway. I've had some Loctite on this before, so mine's a little bit stiff. Yours might be very easy to move. Then go and do the same thing on the other stick. A little bit of Loctite. Flip it upside down and screw the two together. Just watch your cables don't get all caught up. You may need to hold the bottom piece of this so that it doesn't spin around, because you want it to, both of them to be screwed in equally about halfway to give you some strength. Just keep going until it won't screw any further. It's about there. Now you want to determine which way up to have this, which takes us back to that little bit of tape I got you to add onto the stick earlier. So just have a look underneath and see where your little bit of tape is. You might not be able to see it, but I can. It is on this bottom edge, so I want to turn this back around so that when I throttle down, it's on the same side that it was when it used to be inside the controller, right where that bit of tape is. Okay, now you can let that go off for a little bit so the Loctite does its job and it's not wanting to spin around on its own. Then we want to plug these back in, throttle to throttle, to rudder to rudder. The throttle will be coming from this pod here, and the rudder will be coming from this one here. So just follow those leads down, plug those in, and then the final thing we need to do is add something soft to go on here. So we'll do that now. Alright, so I'm going to go super low tech for my my cover to make it a bit nicer to hold with my hand, and also to protect some of these moving parts in here. So all I've basically got here is a piece of soft foam. Removed the hollowed it out in the middle here like this, as you can see, and then that's just going to basically go straight over the top and push on. You may use whatever you like. You could use something more rigid if you like, as long as it fits over snugly and doesn't interfere too much with the inner workings, and then comes down and sort of touches down here. Now all I'm going to do is grab some tape and tape around the sides here to hold it into place. It may be worth, before permanently attaching that on there, it may be worth adding some tape to some of these leads. See this lead right here? Maybe worth just adding a bit of tape just to hold that lead into position so it doesn't go anywhere. And I've got another bit of tape already on the side here holding that lead in place. And then also over on the side here where these leads come out, grab some more tape and just tape that down so they can't sort of go anywhere too much. Just bear in mind when you're doing this, you want to give yourself enough slack on your wires so that the controller can move freely. So if you're going all the way over to here and it's getting a bit too tight, just adjust your tape so that it can move freely. Same goes for up underneath here as well. On here, I think I showed you before, there's just a little bit of cable tie, or I've just got a bread tie actually, just attaching these wires to the stick, just to keep them out of the way a bit more. Just check your movement, make sure it's free. Mine's still spinning a little bit because I haven't waited long enough for my lock thread to go off, but once the lock thread has gone off, that should stay where it is quite nicely. Okay, then basically attach this on however way you see fit, whether there's somewhere you can screw it on. In my case, I'm just going to tape it up. Now, one of the other things I've done here is added some labels here to my trims. Now, even though my trims are exactly where they were to begin with, this is obviously for mode 1. If you're on mode 2, these would be different. But they stay where they are on these digital type of controllers. If you're using this older type of stick, then obviously they would remain with the stick. Now, just bear in mind, the one programming difference that will change in this whole setup is the rudder. It will be reversed. Not only internally with your either switches or your programming, but also on the trim itself. Now you can unscrew that and flip the whole thing around if you wanted to, otherwise I'm going to write a little note up here just reminding me that that's reversed. Which brings me to my other point. It's probably worth covering up this hole with a bit of tape just to stop any dirt and crap from getting in. So I'll let this go off for a little bit so it doesn't spin on itself. I'll tape all this up, give you one last look and make sure it's working properly. Okay, now that you've done all that, your controller is ready to try out. As you can see here, I've closed in this hole. I've made note on here that my rudder trim will be reversed. I've got my piece of foam taped on. So now you just want to go around and check that you've got plenty of flexibility with your cables so they're not getting caught up, twisted or jammed when you do all of your movements in every direction. And then you can go ahead, put your batteries back in, turn it on, make sure it's functioning. Now it's worth having your controller working with an aircraft, a helicopter or a plane before you go ahead and do these modifications, so that when you get to this stage you'll know that everything is working correctly if you only have to reverse the rudder. Now I've got this on, I'm going to plug in the plane here, which I've got sort of held back with a couple of very heavy weights so it won't fly off the table. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug this battery in and see if it's all working properly. Okay, so I've got the plane upside down. Make sure my transmitter is on and selected to the right model. Make sure my throttle is hard down. Make sure there's no cables getting in the way, stopping that from going to its lowest position. Bear in mind that that's throttle up, that's throttle down. Up, down. Make sure it's right down. Now, this is obviously a bit tricky because I've only got one hand, but I'm just going to put my elbow in here, make sure my throttle, in case my throttle's the wrong way, my propeller can spin freely. It's not going to go anywhere or cut me. Now this is probably the hardest thing to do with one hand. All those modifications were tricky, but plugging these cables in and out is not easy either. So bear with me. Okay, there we go. Now just hold the plane for a second while it does its startup sequence. I know what sound this plane should make, so I know already that that's my throttle is the quick way around. Okay, that's ready to go. If you've got a whole heap of other crazy beeps, it probably means that your throttle is around the wrong way and you've done something wrong. But we'll get to that in a second. Close that up. Pop it in its restrainer. Actually, other way around. Now we'll test these controls. I'll just move the camera a bit so you can see a bit better. Okay, now that's all plugged in. My controllers are doing something. Now, for some reason, if when you plug the battery into your plane, either the propeller starts spinning on its own or you get a heap of crazy beeps, as I said, it means your throttle is back to front. In this case, it's not. In that situation, you want to unplug your battery straight away, and then this whole section needs to be spun 180 degrees around so that the throttle is the correct way around. So it's worth making sure you're holding your model very securely when you do that initial check. Okay, now I know that my throttle is the quick way around, so I can test that just a little bit. I don't want it to go too nuts. So now that I've done that, I'm actually going to cut the throttle. Now I do have a throttle cut on this controller, so I'm going to switch that. So now my throttle is inactive, and we can go through the rest of the controls. Now, your elevator is pulling the entire stick back towards you. Towards you is up, away from you is down. That should be pretty much as you're seeing now, within reason. Now, left and right, the entire unit should be controlling your ailerons. Just check that they're going in the correct direction. And then your rudder is twisting the top of this controller like this. Now, as I was saying before, this will be reversed, as you can see, which it is. We're going the wrong direction. So we need to go into the unit and change reversing on our rudder. Change the direction. And now, go back a bit. As you can see, right is right, left is left. Now, as I was saying before, this trim here will still be reversed. So if I trim that to, say, the right, it's going to be trimming to the left. And if I trim it to the left, it's going to be trimming back to the right. So just bear that in mind when you're flying, that switch is reversed. All of the other ones will be exactly the same. Now obviously this is a mode 1 controller, so my elevator is here and my throttle is here. If you're flying mode 2, they'd be the other way around, but that doesn't matter that much. I've labelled these, I don't know if I mentioned that before, just to make it a bit clearer for myself. Alright, so that's everything working. Now, as far as troubleshooting goes, if you plug this in and your ailerons are backwards or your elevator is backwards, you've probably put this stick in, the bottom one, around the wrong way. So you're going to have to open it up and spin it around the other way. And then obviously because you've done that, this will also have to be spun back the correct direction. And that's about it. Up and down, ailerons left and right, rudder left and right, throttle up and down. One other thing I thought was worth mentioning on this that I've changed. Right here you normally have a harness adapter for attaching a neck strap to. Now you won't be able to use that because it's going to get in the way. So if you wanted to remove that, you can. It may not affect everybody, but I just found at the extreme ends of the movement down here that it was knocking on it a tiny bit, so I removed that. One other thing I've made to this controller, which is more specific to this particular Spectrum controller. Up on here there used to be a hold down switch that you used to have to hold down in order to kill your throttle, and I've just swapped that out for a normal switch so that with electric models, when it's off, it's off. I don't have to keep my finger on it. So that's sometimes worth doing if you have this type of controller. Okay, so that's it for this video. As you can see, I've got my full setup here with my harness ready to fly. If you want to see this harness a bit better, go back and watch part 1 of these videos, and I'll have a better description of it. The next video I'm going to go out to the local field and show how this all works flying for real. Once you get to this stage, I definitely recommend, if you can, plug your controller into a simulator, flight simulator, then go ahead and do that and practice doing that for a little while first before you go and try and fly the real thing. Otherwise, buddy leads are a good idea. There is another method that I learned back when I was a teenager learning how to fly, which is basically closing your eyes and visualising the plane in the sky flying whilst moving your controller around, and visualise what you're doing and what it's doing to the plane. Sometimes doing that for a while can help a little bit as well. But anyway, I'll see you next time, and till then, hope all this made sense. If not, just let me know and maybe I can do a few things in more detail on another video if need be. Till then, catch you later.